Okay, so I want to speak a bit about this killer clown phase phenomenon that has been sweeping the world. It's very difficult to know when exactly this began. A lot of sources tend to cite this clown, creepy clown that was spotted in a porch in Jacksonville a few months ago, but some originated much further back to a case in Northampton here in the UK back in 2013. I think personally the gap is too big for that really to be connected. And that particular incident in Northampton, the guy admitted it was a prank. Um, Caulrophobia, or the fear of clowns, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is not a new thing. And it certainly goes well beyond this year. It goes certainly back to Stephen King's It, which I believe was the film was made in the 80s, unless I'm mistaken. Um, some have said that this recent phenomenon may be a marketing promotional scheme. Others have cited the snowball effect, where people get interested in an idea or seek to emulate something because others are doing it. There have been phenomena like this throughout history. Um, Strange phenomena, for example, in southern France in the early 16th century, there was a so-called dancing phenomenon when several villages actually, the inhabitants just spontaneously danced to sheer exhaustion, danced non-stop for 3 days or something, and it was sort of mass hysteria. Similar explanations have been put forward for the witch hunts in Salem and in the UK and in other parts of Europe. Um, so this is certainly an interesting phenomenon. I mentioned that coulrophobia goes back a long way, and I think it's fair to say that has now superseded clowns as being seen as funny. The World Clown Association estimates that there are only 2,500 professional full-time clowns left. 2,500 in a world of over 7 billion people. So this is really a trade that is on serious decline. Part of me feels sorry for professional clowns who really are just want to entertain children. You know, they want to be funny. The traditional circus clowns or the August, I believe they're known as within the industry. But even going way back, I think of the early paintings of Pablo Picasso. Picasso done paintings where there's certainly very creepy clowns, and I'm talking about paintings that were produced in 1905. So the scary clown phenomenon is not new. There's always been that aspect, and I think it's. I saw a professional clown interviewed about this, and he couldn't be more different from the current phase that we're seeing. And he said it's probably the aspect of covering one's face that creates a sort of mystery, which perhaps creates the fear. Um, so why are clowns scary? Where does this come from? That's an open question. What do you think? Why are clowns scary? Where does this notion of the scary clown coming from? It is interesting to note that one of America's most notorious serial killers, John Wayne Gacy, he had been seen as a role model of the community in the midst of his very appalling crimes. He was responsible for the deaths of over 30 young boys, and there's a very infamous photograph of him dressed up as the sort of local clown. He would go to children's parties and entertain people. He even had a picture with the First Lady at that time, Rosalind Carter, which was incredible. I'm not sure if there's ever been another serial killer that has sort of risen to that close a rank, that has been that prominent to a prominent person. Um, So certainly that might be part of this phenomenon because the John Wayne Gacy case was one of the most documented serial killer cases in America. Um, I remember not personally, but I've seen videos of his execution in 1994. There was big crowds outside, so certainly that case got a lot of public imagination. Stephen King's It, like I said. Um, I think just generally there is this notion of clowns being scary. And like I say, I sort of feel sorry for honest clowns, so to speak, or those clowns who really are just honouring the old trade of being a type of jester, a funny person. I guess clowns originate, in the modern sense that we know them with the painted face. They tend to originate to about the late 18th century. There's a character in Britain, Joseph Grimaldi, was one of the first clowns in the modern sense. In the royal courts of Europe, there has always been jesters, that is, funny, funny characters who would entertain the king and queen, and I suspect that modern clowns originate from that, and certainly they were a staple of circuses. Um, but like I say, in recent years, has this been, you say clown nowadays, and I think most people automatically associate it with fear aspect. Um, Here in Britain, we had a sort of dark comedy show called Psychoville. Very watchable, actually. I don't watch a lot of comedy, but I did watch that. And there was a character called Mr. Jolly. Those who have watched the show here in the UK will know who I'm talking about. And I would invite my American viewers to check it out. Just type in Mr. Jolly, Psychoville. He's sort of a very dark clown. Um, but he's not necessarily a killer clown. And I don't want to give too much away, but he's a dark clown. And that's a perfect representation of where Caulrophobia perhaps comes from. He's not a killer clown in the sense of Pennywise in it, but nor is he a funny clown because it's sort of a dark sense of humor. If you just check it out, you'll see what I mean. He has dark makeup and he has no sense of humor. He doesn't like children. He's always whinging about things, so he's quite a dark character, but very clever dark comedy. So yeah, there's been sightings all over the world. There was even a sighting down the road, not far from where I live, in a place called Chester Street in County Durham. There's been sightings all over the UK, like I say, going back to Northampton in 2013, but all over the US. I saw one video where three young guys, or maybe four young guys in Alabama, decided to go clown hunting and actually gave the clown a taste of his own medicine. Some people were speculating the whole thing was set up. There were some indiscrepancies in the video. That was quite an entertaining video. In terms of this being pranks, well, I think I would say to pranksters they need to be very careful because at some point, firstly, there has been vigilante cases. I've just heard about a clown in Peterborough who was punched by a man he scared. And certainly there would be, open carry states like Texas and I guess Arizona and elsewhere where one of these pranksters is going to get shot by someone who's trigger happy. And, they're not going to wait to see if it's a prankster or, you know, uh, a lunatic that's escaped. And the fact that some of these clowns are carrying weapons, whether they're going to use them or not, firstly, if you're scaring people, you don't know if someone has a heart condition or not. Certainly, a lot of the people that are scared seem to be young people, but if they were to do this to an older person, that's no laughing matter. That could give someone a heart attack. Um, and I've seen videos where they've been chasing cars and so on. So it could be because it's leading up to Halloween. But like I say, there's a snowball effect in this. It's spread from, I think it's been reported in pretty much every American state now, in Mexico, in the UK, in Australia, in Canada. Apparently, Russia has warned its citizens to be on the lookout in the UK because this phenomenon, I have noticed it tends to be, with the exception of Mexico, in English speaking countries. So I don't know if there's something in that. So let me know your thoughts. Why do you think people are scared of clowns? That's question number one. What do you think of it? Do you think people are being overly sensitive, or do you think the pranksters are assholes, basically? I personally think that most of them are pranksters who are kind of jumping on the bandwagon. However, I think there is a risk here that there are going to be genuinely dangerous people will take advantage of it. And then how do you know who's a prankster and who is, an escaped lunatic, quite frankly? Like I said, John Wayne Gacy had this sort of alibi of the clown. Although looking at the photographs on Google, how anyone took him to be a role model of the community, I don't know. But having said that, there's been examples before outside clowns. I mean, for years, Jimmy Savile, the TV presenter from Leeds, very popular TV presenter here in the UK. When he died in 2011, he was hailed as a great guy who gave money to charity. well, there's subsequently been massive scandal around him. Anyone in the UK knows about this. And he's subsequently been seen to be one of Britain's most prolific paedophiles. Um, literally hundreds of cases of abuse. Um, and certainly looking at the old videos from the 70s, how anyone could have been taken in by that, I don't know. The BBC came under enormous scrutiny for that. I don't want to go off on a tangent. I'm just making the point that, clowns have, it's an example of a trade that is supposed to be reputable. They're supposed to just be entertainers, but they have been damaged by this phenomenon. And like I say, I do somewhat sympathise with those honest clowns who are innocent people and they just want to, keep alive an old trade. Because it is a dying trade and there's something sad about that. On the other hand, this coulrophobia is a real phenomenon. So let me know your thoughts.